right, is this thing on? Can you guys hear me out there? Let me pull up the live stream and make sure this is actually going. If you can hear me, post it in the chat. I see there's a few people already here. All right, I got a thumbs up. We got sound. We are good. All right, here we are. We're live on the interwebs. Welcome, everybody. You are with Andy from Andy Parrish Outdoors, and I've got a treat for you guys tonight. Got some special guests that have decided to join in the conversation, hang out a little bit for an hour or so, and talk a little bit about backpacking and camping and all that fun stuff. Tonight, we're going to specifically talk a little bit about winter camping, and I've got a ton of questions about hot tenting. So I don't know how many of you out there are familiar with this craze that's sweeping the nation, hot tenting. It's everywhere. You turn on YouTube and it's all over the place. Or maybe that's just my stream, but it's all over the place. And got a lot of questions. It looks like a lot of fun. And if you're like me, maybe you've done a little bit of, winter camping, and, it's fine. You're comfortable and there's a lot of pluses to it. But imagine camping in freezing cold temperatures, maybe even sub-zero temperatures, eating well and being warm and all that fun stuff. And, getting into your tent and there's a stove that's warm, all that good stuff. Well, we're going to talk about that tonight. So let's bring out my guests. I've got Tim is joining me again from Backpacking with Buckley. He's going to share his knowledge in this arena. He's similar to me, a little newer to the hot tenting world, but he even has more experience than I do. And we're also going to bring in Justin from It's Good in the Woods. And if you've watched any of Justin's stuff, he does a lot of this. He's got a lot of great videos, a lot of great content out there, informational stuff, reviews, and a lot of trip videos too. Doing a lot of winter camping, doing some backpacking, doing a lot of hot tenting stuff. So I was really excited to have him on the show tonight, so we can chat a little bit with him about just his experiences with hot tenting and winter camping in general. So let's stop clamoring on and let's bring these guys on. All right, welcome Tim and welcome Justin. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
Doing fantastic.
All right. Well, Tim, I'm glad you're back. We had you for a trial run last week. As kind of the showstopper. The
showstopper.
you were kind of the one to come in and be the surprise character. And I talked with your agent and we hammered out another appearance. So happy.
Yeah, I'm glad we could work it out.
Yeah, it was tough negotiations, but held my feet to the fire. We were able to make this whole thing happen. So
right. I noticed a little smirk. I noticed a little smirk on your face when you were talking about my experience there, Andy.
Well, I can't smirk too much because your experience is more than my experience, which is a whole lot of nothing.
We're on the same field. That's why Justin's here.
Well, yes, Justin's here to kind of like put us back into play a little bit from time to time when we go off on the rails, and he can say, yeah, that's not a thing. I don't know what you guys are talking about right now.
I think we let him lead the train. Yeah.
Well, Justin, I'm glad you're here too, because I'm new to this field. I actually just bought my first hot tent. It showed up like a couple weeks ago, right after Christmas, and super thrilled, super excited. But I'm a total newbie. A total noob with this whole field and trying to figure it out. And to be honest, one of the channels that I watched a lot of as I went through that whole process and even trying to figure out what are the right questions to ask was your channel. You had so much stuff on there, so much good content, just informational, experiment, trying different things and good little tips and tricks. So I was real thrilled to have you on. What's your background? Like, for people that don't know you, that maybe know me but don't know you, tell a little bit about about your background. And Tim, we totally skipped over this for you. We'll circle back to you at some point.
Oh, you're good. I want to hear this too.
Yeah.
I guess I don't really have just a kid playing in the woods, and it evolves from there. That's really the background. And I never went to school for this stuff. I don't have any formal training, nothing of the sort. I just was a kid that gravitated towards the woods. And as I grew older, the challenges grew bigger, and I liked pushing myself. So it just all evolved from there. Hot tenting for me is relatively new. I've only been doing that for about 4 years.
Okay.
Maybe 5. I've been a cold camper. Most of my winter experience up to that point, but it's just a matter of really just loving it and doing it and getting out there and doing it and getting my ass handed to me and learning from it and doing it and the whole process. It just constant evolution.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. Like you said, when you introduced to me different things, trying different systems, and I like that. I don't like being stuck to I just really like to try and do different things. It's what keeps things fresh, and that's the evolution of me outdoors, pretty much, and the channel.
Well, I'm exactly the same way. I think the reason I got into backpacking, and I've only been doing that, I think I went on my first backpacking trip in 2014. So I grew up kind of car camping, doing that kind of experience. So, nothing much more than that, but I always had a fascination, always had an interest. And when I had the opportunity to go, what's that, 7-8 years now, really got hooked. I really enjoyed it. I've always liked the, going with friends and doing the car camping thing. Yeah. This was a whole different thing though. And like you mentioned, it's the opportunity to kind of challenge yourself, and it's a whole new skill set. You're potentially out in the wilderness and there's nobody around for miles, and you have to just make it work, figure it out. And I'm no expert. I've been doing it a little while, but I really enjoy the process of learning new things, challenging myself, learning new skills. That's been a big part of this. I got involved too, as I've got 2 teenage boys, got them involved with, scouting and that kind of thing a while back. So again, it was learning for myself, but then also being able to teach some of that, what I've learned, and learn with them along the way. And then it's just exploded into, a whole range of different things. Well, for me, hot tenting is kind of another page in that book, another chapter of just being able to look at, okay, I've done the, camping in single degree and, hammock camping and tent camping in those conditions. And I can be comfortable, and, we'll get a roaring fire and we'll cook over the fire and do that kind of stuff, and, hike our way out of camp. But I've, come across just in the last couple of years, this kind of trend about hot tenting, of bringing a tent that you can actually, it's designed to put a stove inside the tent and heat the tent. You can cook on the stove. You can let it burn as long as you want. I've learned that most people don't let it burn all night long, but it's going to go out at some point in time. But you can wake up in the morning, get another fire going, and gosh, people are doing this. I was watching some of the guys, and I mentioned it last week with Tim, people are doing this in, minus 27 degree temperature and having a ball and having a great old time. And you've got a way to stay warm and keep going. So it's really just been, I don't know, a neat thing to look into, kind of that next phase of how can I challenge myself? How can I just learn something new that I'm not really familiar with? Tim, what got you into this? Because you're a fairly new hot tenor yourself, right?
I am indeed. Very new, as a matter of fact, as in I've been out 2 nights.
Yep.
I think that counts as very new, doesn't it, Andy?
It does. I'm extremely new. You're just very new.
Yeah. Well, what got me into it, I guess, is honestly, and not to toot your horn, Justin, but I think you were the first hot tenting video. You and Spackman and another friend of mine, Signal Outdoors, And I'm not saying that just to plug channels, but yeah, I just watched a few videos and the experience looked so fun, and then I started watching enough to know how much work it is as well,
Yeah.
and sought a lot of advice and knew that I wasn't generally going to be burning my stove all night and things like that. So I knew what I was getting into. But yeah, I think I just like new forts. Like
Yeah.
Justin was saying, like I like to go out and try different kinds of forts. I'll always be a hammock guy, at heart when it comes to comfort. But I like to go out with a tent once in a while. I tarp tented once, and not quite to the degree of Justin's most recent endeavor, but yeah, I like new forts, and a hot tent is like a cozy, warm one, ideally.
Well, I think Tim, your first video of you hot tenting in the hammock, might have been the first time I ever realized you can do that. I think everything I had seen up to that point was all, you've got a ground pad, and you're sleeping on the ground. It's a teepee structure or something like that. Yours was
Right.
the first that I saw and thought, well, you can hammock camp in a hot
Yeah.
tent. That's kind of different. So very
Well,
cool.
I'm so sorry that was your first experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I saw it last year. They like one Tigress came out with a one, and now this year they have the model I got, and there was a whole saga between YouTuber and all that thing, and it was kind of like a soap opera for adults last year. And that's where I think I just started seeing these hammock hot tents, and I just realized I'm gonna get the lightest one I can possibly find. And as far as I can tell, there's half a dozen options out there is all.
Yeah.
Justin, you may know.
I don't. I've only seen a few options that are out there, but I'm not a hammocker, so I don't really pay attention to that portion of the market.
I'll be the expert in one category tonight then.
You got me there for sure.
So yeah, we could ask the question, Tim. We can say, ask the panel, how many holes have you burned in your tent so far? So
one, knock on wood.
I've
only had 2 fires, so I don't have one yet, but I'm working on it.
It's only one, but it's a real good one.
It's a nasty one.
Yeah. But you got it all patched up, and you're back out there again like the next week. So.
But I use clear tenacious tape to remind myself of the pain. I'll be able to see it forever. Yeah, well, as long as the tenacious tape lasts.
And speaking of which, and being that it's a hot tent video, if anyone out there is hot tenting, get yourself some tenacious tape or some sort of adhesive, especially if you're using these lightweight packable tents, because sparkles happen.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time. It's the nature of the beast.
Now, Justin, how many different versions have you looked at? Like, have you been able to look at up close and personal?
Man, like 7 or 8. They're manufactured, and I've built several of my own.
Yeah, I saw the one that you did. You left it up for a really long time, kind of as a torture test to see how long it would keep standing. Is that correct?
I did. I got sick and tired of all the people that were commenting, telling me that I was insane and stupid and dumb for using tape and it's useless. So I had to put it to the test, and I did. I pitched that tent, and it stayed in that same spot for a little over 8 months.
That's pretty cool.
And I didn't know it was that long.
It was just a hair over 8 months.
Wow.
It was a snow load, a tremendously heavy, wet snow load that brought it down. And what failed was the big oak pole that I pitched the tent with. That's broke
what failed?
in half, and then poked a hole right through the tent. None of the tape ever let go, if anybody's wondering.
Fantastic. What kind of tape was it, Justin?
Gorilla tape.
Okay.
It was.
Gorilla tape, yeah. Yeah, that stuff's incredible.
Yeah, I have a roll of it. Is it duct tape that doesn't work well in the cold, or is?
I'm sure duct tape would work to a certain degree, but this stuff is like duct tape on steroids.
All right. Well, yeah, I always carry some of that on my trekking pole as well. So
it's really good stuff. It's really good. Once it really bonds and adheres, it stays there for quite a while.
Yeah.
Now, Justin, did you do much hot tenting before you built your own?
No, I built my own to make sure that it was something that I wanted to spend money on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to know if it was something that I was going to continue doing. And hot tents 4 years ago were much more expensive than they are right now. There's a lot more options coming out, and the price has just really been driving down, which is
Yeah.
really, really nice. But back then, it was quite a bit more expensive. So I just made my own and
Yeah. I
decided
think
that I liked it.
in the chat that you and I had kind of in the week leading up to this, you had mentioned a couple different like names of makers or whatever. And I went and looked up some of those, and they were, $650 to $1,000,
Yep.
for a single hot tent,
Yep.
for some of the really nicer. And I don't know if those were canvas ones or what materials they were, but
No,
most of the
those are
ones that I've looked at haven't been anywhere close to that, kind of in the, the beginner level of just, hey, like you said, I just want to try this out. I want to see what it is. I don't want to be out a ton of money, but I want a good experience. So trying to figure that out, took a
Yep.
little bit of time.
And now you got the Octopeak, right?
Yeah, I went with Looks, I think is how you say it. And their, Husar was the other, Pomali brand, I think was the other one that I was looking at too, or a few different ones. And it just looked like a lighter weight, good kind of beginner, a good solo size, or maybe two people is kind of all I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to carry it if I'm going solo.
It's like 4.5 pounds.
Yeah, it sounded like it'd be pretty
That's
reasonable
nice
to do. That was kind of my list. And I think we'll talk a little bit about that too as we go a little further. Just, for the newbie, for the person who's just learning about hot tenting, or maybe has been watching for a little while. What are some of the things that we can look at? What are some of the questions asked? I kind of like to get into some of that, Justin, from your point of view, and Tim from yours too, just of what the process was like for you. Cause I think, it's a new skill, it's a whole new genre. And if you're into backpacking or if you're into car camping, there's no reason you can't also dabble into this field too. But maybe there's a few things that would be useful to know before you shell out, $400 on a setup or something like that. So,
or something like that. Yeah.
well, and like I was saying, you can get really expensive really quick if you're looking at some of these real high end stuff. $1,000 for the tent by itself, and you're not talking about the stove or that kind of stuff. So,
and that's why these cheaper companies right now are doing really, really well. Lux, and as far as lightweight hot tents are concerned, Lux and Pomali, they're doing well because they're making somewhat decent gear that's lightweight and really affordable. A similar
and it seems to be
outside tent to your Octopeak would be about $1,000. And the Octopeak's not really. I mean, that's a good tent. That's a really good tent. I've had mine for over a year. I pounded that thing, and it's done nothing but it's awesome.
That's what I like to hear.
Tent, a good spot to start for sure, no doubt. It'll get you
and
in the game
it's
pretty cheap. And like I said, when I bought mine, it was over $300. I'm assuming you got yours for less than $2.
Yeah, they've been really come down.
They've really come down, and those expensive ones have not. But I guess to a point, you get what you pay for. But I think for a lot of people, these cheaper tents are working very well, and I can't knock them. The Lux tents that I've used have been awesome. Every single one of them, they're great tents.
Yeah. I have a buddy with the Megahorn.
What's that, Tim? I'm sorry.
The Megahorn, Justin. I have a buddy with that one. Is that that's a Lux too, isn't it?
That's a Lux. Yep. That's the first Lux tent that I ever got.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've seen that in action. That's a really cool one too.
Not the first. I got the Mini Peak first. I'm sorry, and then and then I got the Megahorn. A great tent for the money. I mean, you're not going to get $1,000 quality tent. You can't have all those options and everything for a tent that's going to cost you $200.
Yeah,
but they're awesome. It's a really awesome place to start if you're curious, for sure.
Yeah,
especially lightweight. You had said earlier that it's like a new thing, a new skill. I mean, not to argue, but that's not necessarily true. They've been hot tenting back in Civil War eras, like stuff in little heavy cast iron stoves and canvas wall tents and stuff. The hot tenting's been around for a while, but it's really starting to explode now.
Yeah. Well, and I meant it more from the standpoint that for me, it's a brand new world, you know, so
Yes.
it's trying to then
Gotcha, yeah.
try and get a toehold into that world where there's so many people that are so experienced because it has been going on for so long. But how do I get some of that knowledge, some of that wisdom in that space so that I can make good choices? Because like you said, there's lots of people that have been doing it for a long time. It's just for some reason really become maybe it's even just me, and maybe it's you know, my own kind of blind spot that I didn't really see this taking place um, at the same level of prevalence that I'm seeing it now. Now it's like I can't not see it everywhere I look. You know,
Yeah.
there's YouTube videos and whatnot of people, you know, posting these awesome snowy adventures, and it looks just so amazing. So you know, I wanna know more about that, but it's not a new field. It's just, hey, this is maybe my next chapter because I don't know
Right.
anything about this. So it's really
Yeah.
neat. If you're interested in this, what would you recommend each of you to somebody who's brand new into this space, doesn't know a thing about hot tenting other than it's hot and it's a tent and that's it? Where do you begin? I mean, it's a big field.
It's a very big field, and just like everything else, everybody's got their opinions about which way is the best and which way is not, when there's a
Right.
thousand ways to do the same thing. So my bit of advice would be figure out what it is that you want in a system. Do you want a big, huge, heavy-duty tent that's bomb-proof that weighs 30 pounds? Are you a car camper, a campground camper? Or do you want to pack up and haul your stuff for miles into the woods and focus on the lightweight stuff? Because they're both two completely different markets.
Yeah.
That would be what I would suggest at first. Figure out what it is that you want and then focus on that area, because the paralysis by analysis, man, there's so much information out there.
Yeah.
So many opinions. So you really got to tailor it to your needs and what it is that you're looking to do. That's where to start.
Tim, what would you add to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's a perfect point. A lot of that is just figuring out, are you going to base camp? Are you going to backpack? How often are you going to go? And then like in my case, I live in southeast South Dakota, where we have the temperatures, but not a lot of snow. So I have to like choose a preference between, I got a system that I can hopefully backpack with, because a polk sled might not be an option, you know? So yeah, just considering all those factors. And then like in my case, I bought the Pomali Traveler stove, which is probably too small for the hot tent I bought, you know, so doing a little more, I would have done more research on what would work for me for the temperatures I plan on being in. You know, I would have bought a little bigger stove probably. Still happy with my choice, but if it's 10 below zero, I'm having the desire at least to maybe feed the stove all night.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was in the camp. I think for me, looking at my own needs, I was interested in having it be lightweight, that I could carry it in my pack. You know, it's packable enough. Where I am in Indiana, we're going to get cold temperatures. We're not going to get a whole lot of snow. So, you know, some of these videos that I watch, you know, that are, you know, further north, and, you know, you've got 12 inches of snow all the time, and we're going to get another 8 inches tonight and all of that. You see guys loading up sleds, you know, and converting them into polk sleds where they can like carry it, you know, drag it behind them, but they'll carry huge amounts of gear sometimes. And I didn't know that was going to be in the cards for me. So I wanted something that was small enough, packable, lightweight. So it's not going to be quite as durable. You're going to have some of those issues of, you know, wear and tear is going to be an issue down the road. But I also knew, okay, in my climate, unless I'm really driving north, there's only going to be a few times a year that I'm probably using it. So, you know, can I go out 2 or 3 or 4 times maybe on a winter, you know, in a whole winter season? That's probably all that's in the cards. Unless I'm doing something bigger, I'm driving, you know, north into Michigan for me, where you can get into the heavier snowfalls and the deeper, you know, and then you can bring a sled where, okay, instead of carrying a pack with 50 pounds worth of stuff, I can put that in a poke sled and drag it along and make it much more manageable. So, it's very different from some of the videos where I watch some of these guys that are, out there for a week, and maybe they're doing a hunting trip.
Yes.
And, they're going out hunting during the day and they're coming back in the evening, and they just want to, be able to dry out their clothes and eat a good meal and have a good time before turning in.
Big old stainless stove.
Yeah. A huge tent for, 6 or 8 people or something like that. And it's a whole, but the truck's parked right next to the tent. They're only hauling it, 10 feet, and then they're going out hunting from there, but they're going to be out all week. That's a completely different setup than, more of a backpacking, lightweight kind of thing. So,
and lightweight hot tents is actually huge among hunters.
Okay.
Backpacking hunters, people like out in Montana and, big land. They want a system that's as light as possible. That's just going to give them some shelter and some warmth so that they can eat and not freeze to death.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's really, really minimal. And they're packing their whole system in for however many miles. And they're staying out there for however long it takes to shoot a 1,000-pound elk. And then they cut it up and they carry their camp and their elk back.
Like Ranella.
They're really weight focused. Lack of weight focus. So there's definitely, just like we were just talking about, 2 different ways to do the same thing, right? That's a great example, because you're going to have your people that are going to pull up with their trucks, and they're going to unload everything, and they're going to have their huge Cabela's tent with their big, huge, heavy stainless stove.
Yeah.
And then they'll walk out 10 miles from there in a day and come back or whatever.
Right.
Opposed to the other people, that pack up and walk way out to the parts unknown, the hard to reach places with next to nothing on their back, and stay there for a little while and then haul out that animal when they're done. I mean, that's hardcore stuff.
Yeah.
And,
that's really cool.
Seek outside stuff at all, it's like a cult, man, and they're into it. And that's what,
that's hardcore stuff.
Yeah, it is real hardcore.
I have to say that you said, Justin, you did mention hard to reach places. Would you like to elaborate on that at all?
Just places where they're less traveled, harder to get to. Bigger
I got you. I must have misunderstood you.
Andy from Metro on the Move asks, how hot does it get in the tent?
Yeah, that's all. There's a lot of factors involved in that. The size of your tent, how cold it is outside, the size of your stove in relation to the size of your tent, what kind of wood do you have access to? All those are factors that make that an impossible question to answer.
Yeah.
It's different every time.
What's the hottest you've ever gotten it?
I've gotten upwards of 90 degrees in those tents before, and really cold conditions. Really cold conditions.
And they cool down pretty fast though. So if you're not stoking that stove, that flame,
temperature's gone. It drops.
Yeah.
So it's Andy and Metro, or Andy and Andy. Just to the contrast, what Justin was saying in the 90s, I was down New Year's Eve. I think it was like 7 below or 8 below 0 or something like that. And I think that the hottest my tent when it was like glowing hot was probably in the 50s, and that's on the end of the tent. On the other end of the tent was probably 15, 20 degrees
for that tent.
Right.
Still at those temperatures. That's pretty good.
Right. I was still completely happy my first time out. But yeah, just there's a huge pendulum swing on depending on all those factors. And I've seen guys like Justin, sitting there sweating in a tank top, and I'm huddled right next to my stove with my parka on and everything, But yeah, it's a lot of factors.
Well, and the other thing I've noticed just in a little bit of watching and the short time that I've used my own is, the standing up in the tent, it's going to be potentially very warm, at head level. But if you lay down, say you've got an air pad you're sleeping on the ground over on the side, it may be 20, 30 degrees colder in the same tent, just because, hey, you're down by the ground, maybe there's a little bit of air gap, there's something coming in. These aren't sealed tents, so there's going to be a little bit of airflow. So it can be pretty chilly even when the fire's roaring if you're right on the ground. But if you're sitting up in a chair or sitting on a cot, it might be
Or in a hammock.
completely or in a hammock.
Yeah,
it may be completely different.
That's why I caved this fall, this summer, and I bought a Helinox Chair Zero. I finally bought one of those, and I take it backpacking and stuff now. But I didn't used to. But in the winter, I would, because I'd want to be up, above that stove. It's the stove line. It's the top of the stove. If you're hot tenting in a lightweight hot tent on a really, we'll say it's 0 degrees out, and you can see the same height that the top of your stove is on the tent walls is going to be fine because all the heat is rising. And like you said, up when you stand up, it's going to be like 70, 80 degrees possibly, but there's a frost line right below where that stove, the height of the stove is. You can see there's like a foot and a half up off the ground. All around your tent will start to freeze and get condensation, and the moisture will be pulling in, and the temperature will be different, and it will freeze. You'll see it. You'll see that line.
And that's where you sleep.
And that's where you sleep. Yeah.
Right.
Which brings up a point. Like, I don't really want to sound condescending or anything, but people should know that when you're hot tenting, it's not a safe fall. Like your sleep system should be rated for the conditions that you're going to be in.
Right. Yeah, like you're not hot tenting.
And that is a huge misconception. I see it all the time on a whole bunch of different Facebook forums.
Yeah.
People get hot tents and they think that that's going to keep them nice and toasty and a tank top sweating in 0 degree weather, and they bring a 30-degree lightweight backpack and they get cold at night.
Right.
And they want to know, what do I do? Do I set an alarm and wake up every 2 hours and stoke the stove? It's like, you can, if that's what you want to do. It's not right. It's not wrong. If that's what you want to do, go for it. But
you bring a buddy and you make him do that, right? So that you
right.
can sleep on him.
Yeah.
And if anything ever goes wrong, for people that are actually like out there in the woods camping in the winter, things can go wrong sometimes. Maybe a real big gust of wind comes down and crashes your tent, and the tent goes down, and a big huge hole gets melted in it and wipes out your stove, and that gets all deformed. Or what, a tree branch comes down, like who knows what happens. Like maybe you get in a situation where there's no good wood to burn. That's happened to me. It could be really hard to start a fire. Maybe you're going to be sleeping overnight without that fire. You need that sleep system. It's very important and often underlooked.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have that misconception that they want to get into the hot tent because I'm going to be sitting out in 0 degree weather and it's going to be 75 degrees in my tent, and I'm going to be in shorts and a t-shirt and not a care in the world, not realizing that the more you dive into this, it seems like everybody says, that fire's going to go for an hour or two. If you got a big stove, maybe you can get it a couple hours longer than that, but that's about it. So you're not going to have the stove roaring all night long. Some people aren't even comfortable, burning it all night long. Some people are, there's differences on that. So, people talk about waking up and there's no coals left in the fire. It's completely burned out in the stove, and it's 0 degrees outside and it's 3 degrees in the tent, and you better have a sleeping bag and all the, a ground pad that's insulated, that's going to keep you warm, just like you're in a regular tent. Now you can get fired back up in the morning and have a nice cup of coffee and, maybe, bacon and eggs over the, on a skillet, eat some real food and whatnot. But you're still going to have to deal with those kind of temperature swings in the middle of the night, because not everybody wants to get up every hour to throw the wood on the fire, and hopefully it gets warm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I really look at it as it's cozy for the darkness at night, obviously, before you go to bed, and then it's really kicks butt for getting up in the morning and just getting yourself warmed up.
That's my favorite part of hot tenting, is waking up in the morning and you get yourself all set up the night before, so you don't even really have to get out of the sleeping bag. You just kind of get your arms out, get that stove going, and crawl back into your sleeping bag, and then just sit there and wait for a few minutes. And it's just heavenly. It's magic.
I learned that on my second night with all my extensive experience. On night 2, I had I had a fire ready to basically just flick my lighter on in the morning. And yeah, well said, Justin. I mean, it was pretty amazing just to have that ready and barely have to leave the sleeping bag to get it rolling and sit
Yeah,
there
it's
till
nice.
the tent warmed up. And I was like,
It's
okay,
nice.
now I get it, you know?
Well, that's kind of the
After,
worst part of the day for me, is you're
Yeah.
getting out of your tent, your sleeping bag, it's 10 degrees outside. You are toasty, but the minute like you pull that cover off, the cold air is going to come flooding in.
Yeah.
For me, it's a lot of times I've changed out of clothes that maybe were a little bit wet, from hiking in. So I've got my sleep clothes on. So I've got to get up in 10-degree weather and change back into something else and go out and get a fire started or whatever. So it's like that 20 minutes is just brutal. The idea of waking up and like I can reach over here and grab some wood and we're going to start the fire and I don't have to get out of bed. I'm going to let the fire get going,
Yep.
20 minutes
Yep.
and then maybe it's 50 degrees in the tent. We're not talking about 75. Maybe it's 40 degrees in the tent. It's just not 3.
Yeah.
That sounds so appealing.
Oh, it's
Going
huge.
forward.
is.
Just morale, just
Yeah.
morale.
Yep.
Well, yeah. Plus, you can kind of take your time packing up. And I mean, last year was really my first year of winter camping or winter backpacking, I should say. I'd winter camped, car camped and stuff. But that was the hard part about it was I would just get up and haul ass out of there as fast as I could. No stuff sacks, just jam everything into my bag and get moving as fast as possible because it's a lot different starting a whole fire and going through that whole process than starting a fire in a hot tent. At least you can get that put out quickly and it's a lot less process than building a wood fire at a fire pit outside your tent or hammock.
Now, I think a lot of people like Melissa who talks about, being a little terrified of hot tenting in general. There's some fears that are out there. The probably one of the biggest I have or I've heard of is people talking about not only burning down their tent or like carbon monoxide stuff. So, what do you say to somebody who's looking at this going, I come from, for example, we take scouts out to some of these, big campgrounds and plastered on like every tent we've ever put, the kids in, it's like no flames in the tent. It always says something like that at all these like, big campgrounds that they go to. And then here we are turning around and we're putting a stove in a tent. What do you say to people with the concerns about whether it's carbon monoxide or just, melting down the tent? What do you say to that?
I would say if it's something that you're really concerned about, just do due diligence, put your research into it and learn it and understand what you're dealing with and adjust accordingly to however and whatever makes you feel most comfortable.
Was that ever something that bothered you, Justin? Did you ever think about either melting the tent down or, carbon monoxide kind of thing?
No, I kind of worried about it a little bit, but I've grown up basically living with wood stoves. It's how I've heated our home since I was a little kid, so I'm very familiar with them. I did kind of get a little weirded out because people were raging about it on Facebook and stuff. So I did start carrying a carbon monoxide detector, but then that started really getting my wheels turning. So I did a lot of research on it. And to my knowledge, as far as anything that I've looked into, I've never come across one documented case of a person dying in a hot tent with a wood stove.
Right. With a wood stove, right?
Wood stove. That's key. That's key. Charcoal, canister stoves, gas stoves, different story. Never with a wood stove. I have not found one documented case. That being said, I'm not saying don't worry about it, because someone could very well be the first eventually, and I don't want to have anything to do with. Well, Justin said that, but but if you want to carry it and that backup, go for it. If that's going to make you sleep better, by all means, and that's the answer. Like, yes, by all means, do it.
Well, and they're not big. I mean, I have one that's a tiny little thing, so you can get things like this will give you a reading, parts per million, safe levels,
Yep.
unsafe levels, dangerous levels, all that kind of stuff. So
And
it shouldn't
like
be a
you said,
reason that it turns you off from hot tending altogether. You can still get into this field, and if you're nervous about that or concerned about that, these will set off an alarm if
Yep.
you get to levels that are even, hey, it's concerning. It's not dangerous, but it's, hey, levels are rising, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what it takes to get you, I guess I would recommend it to beginners.
Yeah.
People who are just getting into it, they don't really know what they're doing. I would, get one, for sure. But
Yeah.
and like you said earlier, these tents, most of them aren't really airtight, and
yeah, there's typically
that factors
airflow.
into why I don't really worry about it, because
Yeah.
I let my fires go out at night. I don't really like snow skirts. I don't seal the bases of my tent. I always have lots of airflow ripping through, and I have a sleep system that's rated for the temperatures. So by the time I'm in my sleeping bag going to sleep, that fire is well on its way to dead, and it's going to get really cold really, really fast.
Yeah.
And I don't worry about it at all anymore. But I can see why people do, and take the necessary precautions by all means.
Tim, have you ever been concerned about that?
No, I maybe ignorantly so. I mean, but at the same time, I mean, I looked up the stats like Justin, just kind of looked into it to see, how often this kind of thing happened. I couldn't find a damn thing. And I, unlike Justin, we had a fireplace when I was a little kid, but I don't have a lot of experience with fires, but I sought some advice from folks like Justin and my buddy Aaron, watched a lot of videos and things. And I just watch my fire like a hawk. I'm sitting there anyway. If my draft looks weird, or if you can smell an intense amount of smoke, you might want to take action. But I'm like Justin said, when I'm hitting the sack, it's basically just coals burning out, and I'm also kind of like watching with one eye out of the corner. By the time I'm asleep, it's probably dead. So it's just, I'm never worried about it. But like Justin said, don't say that's what Tim said. Get the
do
detector.
Your own research, look it up if you're uncomfortable.
I mean, that's the smartest thing to do.
A lot of people talk about, I bought something like this, I used something like this for the first so many times until I really got comfortable, I really got knowledgeable, and then I got to the point where I didn't feel like I needed it anymore. Now, some people will still carry it regardless, just precautionary, but that was kind of what I found is a lot of people said, yeah, I started with it. And you'd ask the question, well, do you still use it? And a lot of them would say, no, not anymore.
That's exactly what happened to me.
Are you in the same boat? Yeah. I mean,
that's exactly what happened.
There's probably half a dozen people I've talked to that have given that exact same thing, that said, I absolutely bought one. I used it and took it for half a dozen times or a dozen times. And then at some point I just said, I'm comfortable enough. I don't think this is enough of an issue to keep carrying it. A lot of these tents too, have venting, aren't airtight. If you lay down in one of them, you're going to feel the breeze coming up underneath the side. It's just, it's another part of just hot tenting. These aren't sealed, in a way that you think you're really going to have things build up over time that become dangerous. And like you said, though, I'm not the expert in this. I'm learning my way through it as I go, but I've come across similar kind of findings.
Works for me.
It's different for everyone. This is one of those topics right now. I'm sure probably someone watching right now is calling me a moron. It's a super heated topic of debate on the internet. The whole carbon monoxide, CO2. People just get ruthless with each other on these Facebook groups and stuff. But it's over the last couple of years, I've noticed that it's a real serious debate.
Yeah.
So
hey, before we miss
I kind
it,
of tread lightly around it. So
I haven't been watching the chat very much, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw a question that I'd like Justin to field for you and I, Andy, and for Rob Pelton asked if anybody's used Biologs. I'm sorry to interrupt or change the subject, but I really wanted the answer to that question. I get one selfish question.
I'll see if I can find that. All I see is like Brian Carlson just fighting with that hiking guy back and forth. It's kind of funny.
Oh, I can't watch and talk at the same time, but I just caught it and I was like, yeah, I'd like to know if Justin's ever tried those.
I'm only about 10 minutes behind in the chat though. So Yeah, like
Have
the
just never tried wood.
what are they called? The like the Duralogs or the
Yeah, well, there's
that kind
Duraflame
of
ones,
stuff.
but the
Duraflame.
Biologs don't have Duraflame. Rob told me has some sort of residue in it. I want Justin to give his take, but there's something called a Biolog. He told me about that's like like natural. It's only like wood particles. Justin, you
I've
heard of it?
I know what they are. I've never used them. I don't. I understand that some people, like when I'm hot tenting, I'm in the woods. I'm burning wood.
Yeah,
It's but I understand that a lot of people can't do that and don't have that luxury. A lot of people are camping at campgrounds or in their backyards or wherever it
right.
is they're able to go. And a lot of people haul in wood, which to me is like absurd. But that's not the situation that I'm in. So it's and I don't mean it like what they're doing is absurd. I mean to me
No, I
that
get you.
like so yeah. Um,
No, let me rephrase it for you a little bit though. So I like the ritualistic part too, like the camp chore part of it, sawing logs and things like that. But I got turned on to the idea from I don't even recall where, but it was a story about how Alaskan hunters will use them like in the morning, for example. So I was doing slack packing or just basically car camping. There was a cart in sight or whatever, and I
yeah.
brought one, and it was really nice for the morning. And if I had a polk, I'd probably bring like one for each morning. So I guess my bigger question would be, have you ever heard of them being more damaging than anything else?
No, no, I haven't. But that being said, I don't put too much stock into it because it's not
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
I focus on and pay
No,
attention
I
to.
respect that.
Well, and so on a bigger branch of that same topic, though, you talked earlier about certain types of woods being the target, like what you'd really prioritize is the type of wood that you're looking for. So for the people that don't have a whole lot of experience with wood stoves, what's the best practices? What are you looking for? What makes the most sense and why? I know there's a lot of
And
variety out there, out in the
there is,
wilderness, depending on where you are.
yep,
But what
and
what makes
that's just
sense?
it.
What are you
Um,
looking for your fires?
what makes sense is what's availably burnable in the area. But
Yep.
ideally, in a perfect world, standing dead hardwood, oaks, maples, anything of the sort. Um, that stuff will burn the best. It'll burn the longest. It'll throw the most heat over time. Builds the best coals. Coals are really important in these lightweight titanium stoves because they chew through wood pretty quick. So
Yeah.
your coal base is really what's throwing heat after a certain amount of time. You can feel it. The first hour or so when you're dealing with one of these stoves, there's some heat. There's definitely some good heat. But once that coal bed gets built up, you can really tell that things radiating a serious amount of heat. So
Yeah.
that coal bed is pretty important. But a lot of times, and again, this is another thing that's like there's no right or wrong way. Sometimes all you have available is standing dead spruce or pine or stuff like that, which is not exactly recommended, but it's what you got. It's what you burn.
What do you
And I've done
notice
it
with those?
many
What do you
times.
notice with those as the symptoms, the result of using a lot of spruce and pine?
For me, the symptoms have just what I've noticed the most is burn times and heat, and the quality of the heat, and longevity of it. I've never had the creosote issues. I've never had issues with my spark arrestor clogging up. I've never had any of those issues, but
Hmm.
I also know that stuff needs to be burnt pretty hot. You don't really want to smolder it down. You just want to crank
Right.
right through it. The same is to be said for wood that's not completely dry
Yeah.
because
Well, and you may have that, right?
when you're really doing this stuff, it's not often ideal situations that you're dealing with. So quite often you've got to get somehow wet wood to burn. So you got to have that ripping. You don't want that damped way down. You don't
Right.
need creosote to build up. You need a hot fire. So it's just all part of knowing how to use what is readily available to you.
Well, and that may kick off a lot of sparks too, if you're using
Oh,
some
for
of that
sure.
stuff. So then you get into the
Absolutely.
issue of, um, Melissa Unlikely Hiker is asking, will the tent go up in flames? Like, what's the
Um,
actual risk? What do you typically see when that happens?
Sparkles. I've never seen a tent go up in flames. Um, Sparkles are what I've seen. I've seen people. This guy he'd only done it a couple times. I think his name might be Tim. He put a wicked big sparkle in his tent. Like,
That was called the tent wall hit the stove. It was
the
even
tip of
dumber.
stove, yeah.
It was even
but
even dumber, more
it didn't,
dumb.
it
Excuse
didn't
me.
go up in flames. Like if it was good,
Correct.
that would have
Yeah.
been the time to happen.
And
Yeah,
you're
good point.
Is it like a sil poly, sil nylon tent,
Yeah,
something
most
like
of
that?
them
It
are
probably
still nylon,
melts.
still polyester, polyester nylon, some sort of.
I always forget it's the one that doesn't stretch as much.
So
Polyester.
poly, yeah.
Still
Yes.
poly, yeah.
Yeah.
And it just melted. I mean, literally like rested on the stove briefly. And
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, good point, Justin. I guess I did the litmus test. It didn't start on fire. It just
Yeah.
like
it just melts. It disappears. Makes a big, huge
like my
hole.
jacket, same thing. Just like
And by briefly, do you mean like an hour and a half before you realize that, what's that smell? Oh, that's my tent.
yeah. Or my gloves that I was burning in there.
But there really are ways to avoid that. Burning hardwood, less sparks. But if you don't have the option, you got to deal with it. The long stovepipe. That's the key to not putting sparkles in your tent.
Justin, is there a ratio for that? Like the height, the pitch, or do you know that?
I don't know the exact ratio, but it's recommended that your pipe be at least 1 foot taller than the peak of your tent.
Okay.
I like to extend that to 2, especially with the lighter weight material tents. With canvas and stuff, that rule is generally for draft, so that your pipe is taller than the tent and the pipe will draft well, not be blocked off by the other side of the tent. With the lightweight tents, having the 2 feet above has really, really reduced the risk of sparkles. And for me, I've got 7 or 8 hot tents that are really lightweight materials, and I've put sparkles in 2 of them as of very recently. I put a sparkle in the Hussar Plus, which was interesting, and then I've put a sparkle in my Mini Peak XL. One little sparkle, and that's the tent that I use the most. That pipe helps a lot.
What's the highest?
Those sparkles will melt instantly.
What's the highest you've ever stacked the stovepipe? My mind goes into weird places where I'm like, can you put like 3 on top of each other and then you can guy it out and it's like 35 feet tall, but you're an 8-foot teepee.
If you had a material that would support itself, you could get it as high as you wanted.
I would love to see that video if you could put that together of like the Guinness record. There's got to be a Guinness record of who's got the highest stovepipe.
We'll have to leave that to a car camper. It's not for me.
That's true. That's great. Let's see. Let's jump in here. I know I'm trying to catch up on the chat stuff. People are they're talking about burn times, and
Metro's talking about high pipes.
This is a good question. So Ben, and I think Justin, you have to answer this because of the sweatshirt you're wearing.
Hi, Ben.
How long does it take to set everything up? It looks like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and that's an excellent question, and it's a very overlooked topic in the world of hot tenting. Hot tenting is a lot of work. It's a lot heavier. There's a lot more moving parts. Setup times are generally much, much longer. There's definitely a lot more work to that aspect of it.
Well, and the wood processing, all of that stuff. Now
that right there is the caveat. Yeah. It's so much easier with the
That's why you always bring a buddy. Bring a buddy.
Well, yeah, especially when you're camping without a hot tent. A campfire will consume 10, 15, 20, 50% more wood than a hot tent stove will. You can get by with a surprisingly small amount of wood in a hot tent, much less than sitting around a campfire all night long with your buddies. So that part is that's quite a bit less work in the terms of wood processing. But setup, weight, and all that stuff, it definitely takes some time. And honestly, when I'm doing more ambitious trips, winter backpacking trips and stuff, where I cover miles and I'm not spending a bunch of time at camp, the hot tent's staying home.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of a novelty thing for me at this point. Like, I take the hot tents on like canoe trips because it's really convenient,
Yeah.
or shorter backpacking trips where it's only a day or two. Because if I'm really trying to cover serious ground, and
it doesn't make
winter
sense.
days are short, and rolling into camp at dark, and you don't even know where camp is because it's just somewhere in the woods. It's not a campsite. So you just bring a regular tent with a sleep system and sleep in it.
Yeah.
For me, honestly, I'm starting to learn at this point that hot tenting is more of a solo trip thing for me. It's like hot tenting has become kind of overrated in my mind. Like, it's a lot more work on trips where a 3-season or 4-season tent would work just as well, if not better.
Right.
And when you're hanging out, for me personally, when I'm hanging out with my buddies, even when it's 0 degrees, 10 below, 20 below, we're all standing outside hanging out by the fire.
Right.
We're not huddled in this little tent sitting around the stove, like passing around a peace pipe and singing Kumbaya. It's like,
sounds great.
That does sound great. Well, that's the end of the video. We're not doing hot tenting anymore. No.
But I mean, and no, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that hot tenting sucks. It's just
I'm kidding.
I know. We're joking.
It's one of those things that I'm starting to discover. I drag all this hot tenting stuff out into the woods and take the time to set it up, and then we just stand outside and hang out by the fire anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I will say, Justin, though, the videos that you put out with that stuff are pretty awesome. So I watch that stuff. I'm riveted to it. I think it's a niche. I think it's an interesting genre because it's different, and a lot of people maybe are gravitating to it because it is different. It's new. It's something, we've done the backpacking. We've done the, hey, we're going to hike 10 miles in, and, I'm going to have my peak refuel meal. And then, I'm going to hike to the next spot, and I'm trying to be as ultralight as I possibly can. And I love that. And I'm going to keep doing that every year, multiple times, over and over and over to infinity. But there is something neat about the idea of, hey, and I completely agree with what you said from the standpoint that for me, it's more like base camping. It's more similar to car camping than it is to backpacking. Maybe I'm going in a couple miles if I'm doing a hot tent. I mean, that, in my mind, and maybe that'll change when I get a little bit more experience. Maybe it won't, but I kind of look at it that way. I'm going to hike in a couple miles. I'm going to set up. I'm probably bringing a lot more gear than I ever would if I'm doing a regular backpacking trip. I'm bringing a pulk. I'm hauling a bunch of stuff. I'm bringing steaks. I'm bringing 3 days worth of food where it's I'm not bringing one backpacking meal, nothing dehydrated. It's all cooking over the stove, cooking over the fire, just comfort. A different style. And I think there's something that's really kind of neat about that. Now, if I do it for 4 or 5 years, maybe I realize, okay, this is only a niche and I'm going to do it a few times a year. And that, I think there's something neat. There's something, where'd I go? There, I'm back.
Oh, you're back.
There's something neat about that, to just a different style. I'm gonna have a little bit of warmth. I'm gonna do a little bit of base camping. We're looking, for example, a buddy of mine who's in the chat somewhere, Smolder. If you're here, say something. I saw you post something earlier. We're going up to Pictured Rocks in February. We're gonna do some base camping. Bring the hot tent in. 2 of us in the tent. Get the stove roaring for dinners and breakfast and things like that. But then we're going to go out snowshoeing. We've got a couple different, waterfalls and sites to see. So we may be hiking 5 or 6 miles plus during the day to try and get to wherever, depending on the conditions, and then come back to the tent that's established and, cook dinner, change out of our wet clothes into something, or dry the clothes, that kind of thing, which
hot tenting is great for that.
Yeah, it sounds like it's the perfect balance of, you get to go out into the wilderness, and instead of doing a 1 or 2 night and I'm out, I could probably do a little bit of a longer trek because I've got a source of heat. I've got a way to maybe dry my stuff out. I didn't really have a way to do that in my normal ultralight kind of backpacking setup. You'd go in and you'd have a change of clothes, and if you really got wet, you got one change and that's about it. And then you're trying to figure out, maybe I'm drying by the fire.
Exactly.
But that's about it.
Stuffing them in your sleeping bag.
Right, exactly. What can I do? I'm hanging them up in my tent, maybe a little bit, trying to, hopefully they dry out a little bit. but that's kind of like what the trips were. The hot tenting now opens it up to a little bit different style, and that's kind of interesting. So I'm even going to try that here in Indiana when the temperatures are, 20, 15, 10 degrees and we're not getting a lot of snow. Maybe we'll get a dusting here and there, but hey, can I, park the car and hike in a mile and a half and set it up, and maybe there's a group that'll get together and hang out. I think that might be kind of fun. So I don't know, something different.
Definitely fun with a hot tent. It's nice to be able to have that centralized spot and then just hike from there and come back. It is nice, and I do that quite a bit. It's a lot of fun. I think the popularity is really starting to take off for hot tents because of the car campers, though. Honestly, people have realized that winter camping can be comfortable, and it's really cool to be able to load up all the camping stuff that you would normally take in the summer months, plus a hot tent, a big ass hot tent with a big stove because it's going to be in your truck or something, and you just pull up somewhere in the campgrounds and stuff, and that's really starting to take off, and I totally admire that, and I can see where that's extremely beneficial, because then you've just got the good old boys that they care less about hiking or doing whatever. They just want to hang out and camp for the weekend with their family or something. And that's hot tenting is just completely invaluable for that reason alone. It's really, really cool to be able to have that option.
That's a big market too.
I also think that that's going to, over the course of time, hot tenting's really picking up. Just over the last 2 years, like boom, huge explosion. So I think, and I'm predicting here, that this is really good for local economies and stuff. Campgrounds are going to start figuring out that, hey, we can stay open all year long. Like, these guys just want a place to park their vehicles. I mean, this stuff's going to start taking off, and car campers are what's really going to push it to extreme popularity.
If you had a campground,
like backpacking trips and stuff are the minority, I think. Honestly.
If you had a campground that you could pretty much car camp at, but they're gonna stock you with wood, and they're gonna make an environment that's great for hot tenting. I think that would be kind of neat to see, and I think you'd probably have a lot of people, like you said, on board that maybe aren't to the I'm not willing to get an RV or get something like that where I'm going to have a built-in heater and go out, but I can throw this in my truck, and the heavy one weighs 12 pounds, and if I really want to hike in a little bit further, I get one that's 4 pounds, 6 pounds, something like that. But I think you could have a ton of people that are doing that and still having fun.
Me too. It's a lot cheaper to spend $1,000 on a hot tent system than it is to spend however many thousands of dollars a camper costs these days.
Yeah.
I can see where this is going to really catch on for people. I think anyway, it's going to be a big. This is just the beginning. What's going on right now?
Well,
this explosion is just the beginning.
So you mentioned a good point though of cost getting into this. So if you're completely new to this, what's reasonable? Like to set your expectations, if you wanted to get into something that's budget, I just want to try it out. What are we looking at for an entire setup, do you think?
Probably $500, $600, $700 anyway, for a cheaper setup. I mean, now you can, it also depends on what you want. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
You can get a little single solo tent I saw the Lux Mini Peak XL on sale today for $95. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's nuts. But that's a one-person tent. So $95 plus $400 for a stove, less than $500, and you're into it. Bam, there.
Plus some all the insulation and.
Well, yeah, the ground.
As long as you got your backpacking gear, you're good to go. But yeah, I'd say between $500 and $700 to get something worthy and good.
And the stove. I'm talking just the tent and the stove.
I think Lux had their stove running for like $230, $250 for like the small Wild West, the 3W stove, the titanium lightweight. You have to pay
for the stovepipe as well, so that makes the price go up a little bit more, I think.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure on that, but most companies, I think Lux still does that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Well, and then you've got other ones like Pomali, which is another one that I'd have people look at. They have a really nice selection of stuff. I don't own any of that yet. I find it really interesting. The designs, the setup. really appealing. Even that I bought the Lux and the Wild Wild West titanium from Lux. Those are great. I'm happy with those. Some of the Pomali stuff, integrating. It's kind of like solo stove. Some of that technology where it's like the smokeless fire pit kind of whole thing of gasification of the burning, so you don't get as much of the smoke. It's a little bit more efficient. They've got spark arresters, and all of that. I mean, some of that's new to me, but even more features. Some of it's a little bit heavier. Some are quite a bit larger. There's just lots of great little features, and it's awesome to see companies putting stuff like that together that are $500 and less for really lightweight stuff. And some of it looks like the quality could be really good. I know, Justin, you've had a little bit of experience with them. Is that true?
Yeah, a little bit. Their stoves they're making good stoves for sure. And I'm definitely not talking smack about them, but I never really got Pomali stoves because in my mind they were too heavy and too small for ultralight titanium stoves. I mean, they're kind of missing the mark. I started with Seek Outside.
Yeah.
Those things are light, and they're not junk as much as some of the Pomali people want to tell you that the Seek Outside stoves are junk. It's not true. It's not true at all. But I've always been focused with weight, like lightweight. That's what I went after. So that's the first thing I bought when I started hot tenting was the stove. And I started getting tense around that, honestly. But I do have the Pomali Traveler stove, and that thing, like I said, they're good stoves.
Yeah, that's what I have too.
I just think they're heavier than what I want, what I'm personally looking for.
Right. It's a little more the base camping, a little closer to the car camping, maybe stuff.
I think so. And that's what you're seeing a lot of is most of the people that are buying these stoves a lot of them are camping in campgrounds and car camping and whatnot, which it's not a knock, that's for sure. But I would, in my personal situation, sitting in the seat, like if I'm a car camper, I'm not spending $600 on a titanium stove that's supposed to be lightweight when I could get a stove that would work way better for my needs for less than $200, like a Nico or a stainless steel stove or something.
Yeah.
If you're car camping, weight doesn't matter. So what's the point of buying a heavy ultralight titanium stove? Now that's just me. I know that other people love these things, and that's cool because I love seeing the innovation, and Pomali is driving other competitions into lowering their prices. I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's definitely happening. They're coming out with all kinds of stuff, and I like what they're doing.
And from my perspective, I went Pomali because I'm lazy and I don't want to put together a snow for real. I just and some of you may have seen that I dented the hell out of my stovepipe, and I went show and tell. I went the lazy route with that and got a titanium section pipe too. I think total it's like 4.5 pounds, and it's not a backpacking item for me either, Justin. But I think I look at it like, okay, well, to me that's a bear canister. I could conceivably do 3 to 5 miles. I could strap that to my pack, and all I got to do is get to camp and literally pull it out, flip some legs up, not screw up this section pipe. And so yeah, it's a matter of perspective. Justin has like all of the knowledge and he's really good at all the easy things. But if you're just lazy and dumb like myself, I would say all in probably 5 pounds on the stove. I'm probably about 13 total with the tent. And it's like, yeah, that's a heavy load, but it's doable,
Yeah, for sure. The Traveler, I weighed the Traveler, and it's like 5.3 pounds with the stove, the pipe,
with the bag
and the carry case.
Okay. 5.3 you said?
Yep.
Okay. I want to weigh it with this and see how it is.
That's assembling that stove. Like, there's a real nice benefit to not having to put a stove together. I wanted the Pomali Traveler for canoe camping trips. My buddy Craig and I, we like to go on week-long canoe camping trips in the fall, where it gets really cold and stuff. So we're breaking down camp and we're moving. We're breaking down camp twice a day, setting up, breaking down, or breaking up, setting down, and moving on. You paddle all day and then set up camp and then wake up and break it all down and then paddle all day and set up camp. And you do that for 8 or 9 days. You don't want to be messing around with, with a stove that you have to assemble every single time. So the Pomali Traveler is definitely going to be awesome in that regard, and I'm really looking forward to using it.
Yeah. That's
That's a
ultimately
good,
why I chose it too. Because
Yeah.
if I go out on a 2-night trip and I'm actually going to backpack, I'm not going to camp in the same place twice. And I don't want to, dexterity and everything, just losing little pieces. It's just, it
Yeah.
doesn't suit
And,
my needs. And again, it's
and
literally based
honestly,
on laziness.
putting those stoves together isn't that hard, but it does take some more time, and it's just
Yeah.
another thing that can go wrong. You can definitely have cold fingers and start losing parts and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal, but it's definitely another part of the process that needs to be done. So the Traveler is sweet in that regard, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's a good point, though, that some of these stoves, and I've looked at the ones that they break down, they come apart so that they're more packable. You can fit them into a backpack. You can carry them. They're very. Some of them are really ingenious that they're how they go together. It's really neat. And then some of them are, no, you really just fold out the legs and you're ready to go. You put the stovepipe on. I didn't know. Tim, you've been holding that stovepipe the whole night, and you just whipped it out right here. So
just whipped it out.
You've been waiting all night to pull that out. I get it.
Yeah, I mean,
you have a big stovepipe. We
tell,
get it. You get it. All right.
I've been waiting for that window. I haven't listened to a word anybody said. I'm just waiting for that window to say that.
I know that's true. You're joking right now, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So you kind of mentioned it a little bit, Justin. And Ben asked the question from the weight of a stove. What's expectation? What's normal? What should people look at if they're looking at keeping it lightweight? They want it packable. They want to hike a few miles in, set up camp, maybe even break down camp and hike to another spot and set up the next day. What should they be looking at stoves weight wise? What makes sense? What do you see being the best out there?
For me personally, I will rant and rave about the Seek Outside stove in terms of lightweight and packability. I think the best. I think the lightest. They're awesome. They pack down next to nothing. You do have to put them together. The panels do warp, but when you put the stove together, it holds its shape. They're just awesome. My Seek Outside stove is the pipe, which is 7.5 feet. The large stove and the carry case, the whole kit, is 3.2 pounds.
Ooh,
that's light. Right?
Yeah,
that's really light.
That's really light. So that is awesome. It packs down flat. I can stuff it inside my backpack. Like the last hot tent trip I went on, I actually went on with Craig, and I packed it all in my backpack. Hilltop packs. I didn't even set up the stove because it didn't get cold enough, and the tent I had kind of sucked. But the point is that whole pack, that pack load out was 30 pounds. Not bad when you're considering
That's
a winter.
awesome.
Not at all. No.
Yeah, and that wasn't even my lightest weight hot tent. Like that tent was 6 pounds. I've got hot tents that weigh less than 2. So I was just trying out a new tent and working on my lightweight system and got it down to just over 30 pounds.
What do you think's the lightest you could go reasonably?
I'm going to guess
with
27, 28 pounds by my last loadout.
Okay.
I think I could maybe 26. And that was also just for one night. But I had enough food for 2 days. So I think I can get it sub 30, 28 poundish range. But back to the question, the Seek Outside, they're great. They're light, but some people don't want to deal with, even if they're hiking miles, they'd rather just carry a few extra pounds and deal with the stove like a traveler.
Yeah.
Which is fine. But
this guy.
No assembly required. Yeah.
But honestly, the way I justify it is that, and I understand that argument, the ease of use. Like that's part of my argument for why I love the Mini Peak XL over so many other hot tents. The ease of use. It's very, very important. But I look at it as being much less work taking 3 minutes to set up a stove opposed to 1 than carrying that extra 3 or 4 pounds for 10
Touche.
miles.
Yeah.
It's a lot less work to carry less weight and just spend a few more minutes at camp setting up your stove. And that's what I've talked myself into. That's how I justify it, and it works for me. I mean, I've been focused in lightweight hot tenting ever since the start, basically, after I made mine. And now that's starting to change. I'm starting to want a bigger, heavier dutier setup for other things other than just lightweight backpacking. You know, it's the gear junkie in me. I just want one of everything.
Yeah, the rabbit hole.
The pulk can only be so heavy, right? You know, there's
Yeah.
only so much you can take. What do you think the heaviest loadout you would do on a 2-night weekend kind of setup? What do you think is
My
the
friends just
limits?
kicked on. Can you guys hear that? Did I just ruin the audio?
No, just a little bit. We can hear a little bit of it.
Okay. So what's the heaviest I would be willing to carry for 2 days?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah, even if you're using the pulk, if you do you have a pulk sled? Do you just all backpack everything in?
I have a pulk.
Okay.
I have a pulk. And I have to say that my answer to that question is it depends on what we're doing for those 2 days. You know, if we're just going into the woods for a couple miles to hang out versus setting up a base camp and hiking for 10 miles up a mountain the next day. And those 2 different situations, but still a 2-day trip. So I guess it kind of depends.
Okay.
If I was just going into the woods to have a good time with one of my buddies, I mean, I would carry 50, 60 pounds. I'd drag 70, 80 pounds if I had to.
Okay.
You know, when the boys from Kentucky came out on my last trip in the White Mountains and last year, I mean, I dragged out steaks for everybody. I dragged out 8 16-ounce beers so that we could drink craft brews. I just loaded pulk right up. And I never even bothered to weigh it because I didn't want to know. And I wasn't going to be shaving weight on steaks. That's for sure. So
I want to go out with that guy.
Yeah,
Tim,
no doubt.
we got to set that up. We're going to have That's awesome. That's sweet.
Yeah, I watched really that video with Jules.
Yeah, that's the whites in the snow. I watched some of that actually this week. Watched it again. The one you guys were hiking up to the top, trying to get to the top, and I think it stopped you you couldn't get all the way to the end, but you were pretty darn close.
Yep.
And that had to turn around and come back.
Yep.
Was watching that one, and
that was fun.
There's multiple people had videos of that same trip, so it was cool to watch different perspectives, different point of view.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
I love about YouTube is the different perspective it's weird. Hanging out with YouTubers and filming is weird because I've been much more prone to wanting to hang out with people than film. So it's really neat to see all those projects, how they all come together.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, I'd rather watch everybody else's version than the one I've seen 15 times during editing.
Right.
True. Lots of great friends. That's one thing that's really neat about the whole YouTube thing is just the different people that you probably would have never crossed paths with if it wasn't for this crazy thing called YouTube.
It's been my favorite part about it. The
people it really is.
Got to hang out with. It's awesome.
Yeah,
well, I've really made 22. That's a big focus, like the social side of things, of just getting together with like-minded folks that enjoy this stuff. That we're all a little crazy compared to everybody else. At least when I talk to my friends and they're like, "Wait, you want to go outside in the freezing cold and have fun and that's exciting to you?" And I'm like, yeah, it totally is. Yep. And there's a lot of people out there that feel the same way. It's just a matter of kind of connecting with those folks and getting together. Yeah, and it's a blast. I've loved it.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. It's wild. Yeah, that's exactly why I started. I mean, I pretty much exhausted all my local resources. Like, I'm not going hiking with you in the winter. No, I'm not going camping. Like, finding these adventure buddies can be hard.
So,
YouTube has introduced me to a whole lot more of them, that's for sure.
Yeah, it seems like you get along with everybody on at least 85-90% of everything. I've never had any kind of strange conflict or anything with anybody. It's just too much common ground.
Not that anybody's told you, Tim. Yeah. They tell me, but they don't tell it to your face, Tim.
Other people's opinion of me is none of my business.
That's right.
I only post it on social media, so you're good.
Whatever they
Nobody
think, that's their business. Well, it's fine.
Yeah. Just as long as you think you're funny, it's all that matters.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
love hanging out. I love hanging out with myself. Like,
That's what I tell
I like the
myself all
same
the time.
music, same TV shows, same gear. I mean, you name it. I got a lot in common with me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think I'm wicked funny.
Yeah. Clearly, I mean, yeah, it's the only way to go.
So Justin, what do you got? Is there any big plans for this year? Is there anything that your bucket list kind of things that you would love to get accomplished, get knocked out this year?
I've kind of got I really want to do the Allagash. I do a big canoe trip. In the last couple of years, I've gotten into the habit of doing a big canoe trip, at least a week in the late fall. And that's kind of what I gear up for all year now at this point. I just look so forward to those trips. And I really want to do the Allagash, but I'm not exactly 100% sure yet. No, I don't really have, other than that, I don't really have anything in my sights and in focus. I've got that trip, this possibility that we talked about briefly on Messenger yesterday. That's still possibly in the works. But other than that, just kind of take it as it comes and try not to book myself too early, because you never know what's going to present yourself.
Yeah,
I've
that's
learned
true.
the hard way so many times.
Yeah.
You commit yourself to a plan and then something way cooler comes along. It's like you're stuck.
That's right. You got to bail
Especially
and say
YouTube,
sorry.
if you make a
I got to
plan
come
with
up
a
with an
YouTuber, and then the
excuse.
better plan comes along, and you're like, oh, I can't go on that trip. Something nuts came up, and then 2 weeks later, they see your trip on.
They see your trip on YouTube.
Yeah.
You can't post that then, right? It is.
Yeah.
That's going to happen.
Fake the date.
Right. This happened 3 months ago.
Yeah.
That happens. What are you going to do?
I always have big plans. I'll think of something and be like, oh, that's what I want to do. And then that'll fizzle out with something else. And it's just, that's another thing about YouTube is I can stretch myself thin just like that. Boom.
Yeah.
I have no more time for anything.
It gets overwhelming when you have all sorts of great opportunities, that's tough to choose.
That's just it. And it's like, it can get a little overwhelming sometimes. It's like you got to tell people no, and we got to wait. We'll see. And if you said yes to every trip that got thrown in front of you or offered up, first and foremost, I'm a family man, so
absolutely. Yeah. Well, and we're lucky that our families are agreeable enough to let us do this stuff that we love to do, and we have to balance that. I totally do. I've got 3 kids and a wife, and a house that I've got to play a part in. So I totally get, balancing that out and trying to spread things out and not to spread yourself so thin. And when I'm gone, that's taking one person out of the equation that is running kids around and doing different things. So, I totally get that impact, so I've in the past, a lot of times just kind of said no to stuff and done a lot of solo. I've gone with a buddy of mine, the same guy, we go hang out, have a great time and do these trips. But, it's trying to balance all of that stuff and then still trying to branch out into this crazy world that is, the YouTube backpacking outdoor community that's so awesome and so deep. And there's so many personalities and there's so many great guys and gals that I want to go meet and hang out with. It's tough to try and, fit a couple of those in. And this year I'm really trying to have, a few more kind of just social meetups and get-togethers and that sort of thing. So I'm excited to have, and like Justin, I don't have a whole lot planned. There's only a couple things that, okay, I'm definitely doing that. I'm doing a Boundary Waters, a trip in Boundary Waters for a week, late June, early July. So that's on the books. That's done. I love the canoe camping, doing that sort of thing.
Boom.
Super excited about that. And then I've got one that looks like early August, going out to the winds in Wyoming and doing a week in the winds and doing Titcomb Basin and a whole loop I've done Colorado the last couple of years. This will be the first trek into Wyoming, but outside of that, there's some wiggle room, and there's some things that, I'd really like to do this. We're trying to squeeze in Pictured Rocks in February. I think I've never been to Pictured Rock, so everybody goes in May and June and July. I thought, well, let's go in February. Let's see what that's like, and hey, what can go wrong? And the shores of Lake Superior in the middle of winter. It sounds awesome to me. We're gonna bring a hot
I can't
tent.
wait to see it.
We're gonna give it a go and go see some ice waterfalls and things like that just look awesome. So, but outside of that, there's a lot of open real estate, and like Justin said, it's kind of like play the field a little bit. I'd love to get together. I'd love to do some different things. I have so many things on my bucket list. There's no way I'm going to get them all in this year, but maybe I can do a couple different meetups and things that are within driving distance, and squeeze in a couple things here over a weekend, or maybe a long weekend or something like that. It just that's the way that it goes, and it sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. So
right.
I can do a lot of long weekends. I'm pretty good at being a weekend warrior. I'm pretty open in that regard. But as far as like week-long trips and stuff, I just basically book out my fall trip for canoeing, and then I spend a few days with backpacking with Jason.
Yeah.
I'll probably do a trip with that dude every year. Like that's
that guy's so fun.
I put time aside to hang out with Jason because he's awesome. We get along really well. And the canoe trip. And then other than that, we got to break up vacation between family and all that stuff. So it's more of a weekend warrior thing for me at that point. But with the exception of I might be able to sneak in a week here, or 4 days or 5 days here, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, kind of break things up that way. So I get to fit in a lot of adventures that way, but I don't really have the liberty of being able to really just book things out weeks and weeks at a time in advance. But not a complaint by any means.
Very blessed. Yeah. Jason has helped me, when I went down to Red River Gorge and I was doing kind of a solo trek first time down there. Hey, you got to hit this and you got to go over here, and, had it all planned out, like amazing stuff. So, but I've never had a chance to hike with a guy. So, we've texted back and forth and done all that. So that, again, that's kind of falls into that bucket list kind of stuff of these get-togethers of, man, he's like 3-4 hours away from me tops. So getting together and doing Red River Gorge or some of these awesome sites that are down that way, Big South Fork, would love to do some big Kentucky spots. So who knows?
Up there someday too.
Yeah, well, you come out this way, you let me know, because that's a stone's throw for me. That's a short drive. I would make that drive in a heartbeat. And same thing, Tim, with you. I know you're quite a distance away. If I can make it out to South Dakota, or if you come back this way again, definitely let me know.
Absolutely.
I'd like to get into Tim's territory. Many years ago, I used to be pretty into rock climbing. And one of my buddies were rock climbing one day, and we ran across this old dude. He was 83 years old. His name was George. He's like a local legend apparently in rock climbing. The dude's 83 years old out there rock climbing with his old buddy.
That's awesome.
We got talking because he was a pretty good dude, and he's like, if you ever can go anywhere, like the best place I've ever climbed rocks anywhere, the Black Hills. You gotta get up there and check out the Black Hills, and that stuck in my mind. I never saw the dude again. Never saw him again, but his little conversation stuck with me, and I know Tim is close. So
the invite is open, fellas, for years to come. I mean, that's kind of the beautiful thing. I don't get all uptight about those types of things, because it's just a bummer when people get uptight about invites. But we're going to be doing this for decades. We'll get around to it sooner or later.
Seriously.
There's only so many we can do anyway. So it's like, if you're on a date and you go, you're busy. All right, we'll do it again next year.
Right. I mean, you guys are both on the list, but I'm kind of in the same boat. I'll always go out. I hope to go out a few times a year with Rob. He's close by, good friend of mine. Meet some of his friends, and I'd love to meet both of you someday. And I'm with Justin. Jason kind of grows on you in about 12 seconds, and I'd love to see him. I'd love to see him once a year, and Jeremiah too. Both those guys are
Yeah.
just absolutely
Yeah.
genuinely awesome guys.
There are lots of laughs.
Yeah, never a dull moment.
No.
But yeah, the invite's open with no pressure attached. That, I guess, is my message.
Likewise.
Well, gentlemen, I
Beautiful.
really appreciate your time tonight. I want to be respectful of everybody's family. We're a little past 9:30, and it's been awesome to see the people interact in the chats and what they've been saying and answering some questions for them. But having you guys on has been really cool. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks.
Thanks for having me on. Did we get to all the questions? Did you have anything else that you wanted to touch base on real quick?
Well, I don't know. I think we covered a lot of the big things from a standpoint of if you're new getting into this, don't be dissuaded that it's a deep pool, that there's a lot of stuff to learn. There's a lot of great resources. You can spend a night on YouTube and learn so much stuff from so many different channels, from people all over the world. It's crazy, how big this thing is, and learn little tips and tricks. Like the big one, I'll have to tell, Justin will get a kick out of this. If I don't know if I can pull it up, but in one of your videos, you said, these tiny little steaks are awful. And I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. These things that work fine for me. It's never been a problem. And then I put my tent up in the backyard and the thing fell down in like 3 days. And luckily I didn't have a fire going at the time, but I'm like, son of a bitch. The guy was right. I'm getting my big yellow steaks and I'm bringing, I think I have them up here. Yeah, I do.
Rob and I are going to try timber locks, Justin.
Oh,
those look nice too.
Bring the big steel ones for like the frozen ground. I have yellow ones. My tent is still up. It's been out in my backyard for 2 weeks. I literally go out there and hang out from time to time. Get a fire going. I take the gas stove, the little Mr. Heater buddy kind of thing,
Mr.
and
Buddy,
you pull that out there and you fire it up and you have a beer and you watch a game or whatever. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to get better at this stuff, figure it out. I probably need to tear the whole thing down and just move it somewhere else in the yard and set it back up again and, make sure it doesn't blow over again before we head to Michigan, deep snow and all that stuff. So
that's the best way.
It's been a lot of fun.
That's like what makes it fun for me is the process, like learning. It's like, it's not the destination. It's the journey, it's really fun to be able to piece all this stuff together and put it together. I find it endlessly fascinating.
It's like adult Legos, you do it
exactly. That's perfect.
You don't play with it when you're done. You just put it together and then you wonder what to get next.
Well, hey now. Okay. Right.
I just think there's too much information out there about everything, and people we just got to slow down, figure out what it is that we want, and then go down that hole.
Well said.
There's too much information. Paralysis by analysis is real.
There is. There's so much we didn't touch on tonight. Like one of the things I would have probably asked is
happens every time.
Food. How much different do you eat on a hot tenting weekend versus like an ultralight backpacking weekend, or do you eat the exact same?
It depends on the trip.
Okay.
It all depends on the trip for me. I'm down with dragging out steaks and stuff and grilling up a nice meal on my little stove. But if I'm trying to cover miles and do something serious or push my comfort zone or see exactly how light I can get that system to be, then I do some pretty cool dehydrated food and still eat good.
Yeah.
I'm really into dehydrated food
you
now.
make me jealous, man.
Dude, you could do some really cool stuff with that dehydrator. You really can.
Next year, I'm getting one.
Do it.
Because of you. Because, you make stuff that looks edible.
It does. He does. He has a ton of stuff, and I'm like, that's awesome. Can he ship me some? How do I get involved in this? Is there?
Yeah. He's starting a food line, 2023.
That's right. Talk about like the pork, your pigs. I don't know if you raise them, but there's so many videos, and I'm like, I just want to taste that. That looks amazing. I don't know what he's cooking up right now, but that stuff, I'm in.
Yep.
That's it. Yep. When you talk about eating well and getting on trail, it doesn't have to be, food that people joke people are like, oh yeah, it tastes so good while you're on trail, but I would never eat that at home. I want to get into the stuff that you would actually love to eat on trail and you would actually eat at home. The same kind of stuff, the same, quality. And it seems like you get that and you're into that, and that's pretty awesome.
I am into that. And I know a lot of people say that dehydrated food sucks, but you're wrong.
You're wrong.
You can make dehydrated food real good. They're not all winners, but once you get something dialed in that works, it works. And it's worth it. So, I mean, you can do it. That's for sure. I've been served way worse spaghetti by people than what I've eaten that I've dehydrated. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to give it a try.
Those are awesome. The dehydrated sloppy joes, those things kick ass. I mean, there's a ton of good food out there that you can dehydrate. It's easy and makes a world of difference. It's pretty awesome. You can dehydrate 4 pounds of food down into like 8 ounces.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So awesome.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thanks so much. I could do this all night. I literally
could. I could once I get going, I could start once I warm up and get the train rolling.
Yeah, I could talk to you guys all night too, but I got a house full of kids. And I'm hungry myself. Unless you guys don't mind me fixing a little dinner.
I don't know who's dead. I got to go check on, make sure they're not burning the house down. You never know.
All the more reason to stay in touch.
Thank you for having me, bud.
Yeah, Justin, it's been a pleasure. We've never met. It's been so awesome just to connect this week and chat a little bit and have you on. It's been a lot of fun. Let's keep in contact. Absolutely. And Tim,
sure.
Likewise,
Sure.
I'll be talking to your agent and,
appreciate it.
We'll go from there,
Tim's a big deal.
Look for a big race coming, Tim.
Real big deal.
Right.
Yeah. I'm excited about it. I do it for the money, just for the money.
We can tell. We know.
Yeah. I know.
You can tell. You just read.
I try to make it that way.
And everything, right?
Yeah. Free budget tents, I'm just raking it in. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure. And you guys both already know I like you, so I'm not going to lay it on thick, but we'll stay in touch and hopefully be able to talk live again soon.
Right on. Yeah,
sounds good.
Yeah. Thanks to anyone and everyone that was watching tonight.
Yeah, thanks for everybody for watching.
Appreciate you guys joining in the chat. It's been a lot of fun. I'll let you know if you really like this stuff, make sure you go to the channel too. Like this video so that I know you like this kind of content, and I'll keep doing this. If that's what you like, we'll keep bringing on great guys like these guys. Justin, it's Good in the Woods. If you haven't checked out his channel, go check his channel out. Tim, skip his. It's not worth it. Don't worry about it.
It's a waste of time.
Backpacking with Buckley. Go check his channel out too. We appreciate it. Thanks so much, guys. Until next time.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.